Welcome everyone! For the ones of you who don't know me yet, my name is Allan Zucconi. I'm a lecturer in artificial intelligence and a science communicator. And if this is the first time you're watching, welcome to Gamedev Graveyard. So, what are we going to do today? Well, as you probably know, last week unfortunately we didn't have an episode, but I'm starting teaching at the college, so my time is a bit it's a bit limited. I'm trying to squeeze as much as I can, but please don't squeeze me too much. It's as you can probably see today, I'm a bit tired, but we can do it. We can do it. So YouTube is actually telling me that 80% of people do not subscribe to the channel. So if you liking what I'm doing, if you think this episode is interesting, then by all means, please feel free to subscribe. Also, I have actually a good news. Finally, after releasing the short documentary about Conway's Game of Life, we managed to get the monetization going on the channel, which I think was quite a good milestone. So the super chat is enabled in case you want. It's the first time, it's quite a good experiment, but if you want to support the channel, feel free to do that. I see there's already some people waiting. Hi Anissa. Actually, Anissa was a guest already on the show, so maybe look at that episode as well if you're if you're interested. And yes, as you've probably seen, today there's not just one Allan. We have two Allan, but well, one is with one L, one is with two L's. So hopefully you won't get too confused. So we'll try to have a very relaxed chat, but maybe we might talk about some topics that might be a bit intense. Just so you prepare. And as much as I would like to, I'm not sure if there's any dose of shitty goodness this week. Maybe we'll ask Allan if there is. But yeah, as you've probably seen, the guest we're going to have tonight is Allan Cudicio. He's a game designer and founder of the indie studio Twin Drums, and he's also the creator of the Wagadu Chronicles, an Afrofantasy MMO where you can roleplay. So what's really interesting... hi, Christomanos. What I think it's really interesting is that the game is on Kickstarter, and, just for a week maybe, and he has already more than 2,000 backers. And out of the 90K, there was the original goal that was smashed in 3 days, was fully funded in 3 days, and I think now is well over 100,000K. So it's quite interesting, and I know that a lot of you are game developers, so maybe it would be interesting to talk with Allan about how he managed to get such a successful Kickstarter. Now, with that being said, and with very, very tight introduction, let me actually introduce you to Allan. Hi, Allan, how are you doing?
Hello, hi. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. I'm doing too many things. But
you're like with the meme mug, just the flames behind you are missing, but you're like drinking. It's all good. It's all fine.
Yeah, exactly. Completely melting, yes, as you can probably see.
Fire.
So, do you want to introduce yourself a bit for the people that don't know you yet?
Yeah, so I'm Allan. I was born in Italy, and I'm Ghanaian Italian. I've been based in Berlin for now 7 years, so this is where I'm calling from. I'm a game designer. I've been in the gaming industry for around 7 years as well. I was first more in marketing, then around 5 years ago I switched to product development, game design. I really wanted to make the games, not just sell them. And then around a year ago, I decided, you know what, I want to make my own game. So I worked on some really cool projects. I was lots of mobile games, some really wholesome games. But then I felt, I wanted to work on something where I had full control, and that was more around some personal themes that really touched me directly. And I did feel there was an audience for those as well. So it's like, it's not it's an indie project, but I wanted to do something commercial. So I started Twin Drums, which is the company I'm currently heading, and we're working on the Wagadu Chronicles, which is this Afrofantasy MMO that Allan mentioned and that we'll talk about tonight.
So, one question: how many Italian Allans do you know? Like, is it is it that
Act-
common? I know another Italian Allan, and I'm like, maybe it's like a common foreign name in Italy.
That's hilarious because actually my Ghanaian mom picked it. And that was because my mom, yeah, my mom, like she grew up in Ghana, so English is, like she's native. And she wanted to move to Italy. She really loved the country. She went to study in Italy. And then she was super excited about, having her first kid in Italy and giving the child an Italian name. But then my father was really I was an like Anglophile, really into English language and music and culture. So he begged my mother to give me, yeah. And so actually I have two names. So I have an Italian name that was picked by my Anglophone mom and an English name that was recommended from my Italian father.
Yeah, he's
So
recommended, like.
yes, yeah, because then he wasn't sure, so he asked my mom to pick one. So yeah.
I think I need to investigate, on those websites that says how popular the names are.
Maybe it's a thing. Maybe it's a thing.
So, I want to talk about the Wagadu Chronicles, but I think that the best way to introduce the game is by asking this question. So, is it true that in the game you can pet the cows?
Yes,
Is that true?
it's fundamental. It's a top. We've had that footage for a long time, and being able to share it on the internet was a highlight for the whole team, because someone on our Discord literally was like, "Why?" I think we shared it on our Discord, and someone was like, "Why don't you share it to the Twitter? Can you pet the dog?" And we're like, "Oh, why didn't we think about it?" And when we shared it with them, they pinged us straight away, and they were like, "Oh yes, that's awesome. We're going to share it on Friday."
Done.
So yes, yes.
So, I don't know if this is spoiler, but can you pet all the other animals?
So what I can say is not yet, but because the game is still in development. But our goal is to have a very wide range of petting possible.
So basically, if the game gets over 200k, you can pet all the animals.
Everything, I really can pet everything.
I like the game already. So
Stretch goal, stretch
if
goal.
if you're watching the petting goals, you
Yes,
should.
but to be honest, it's actually a thing. Like our game is really about the Wagadu Chronicles. Yes, it has some more like survival themes of like there is combat in the game, for instance, and there is even death. But at the same time, coziness, safety, wholesomeness are things. So you can, for instance, play the Wagadu Chronicles without ever hurting anyone or anything. So and feed yourself and become successful and grow and be wealthy. So petting things or animals is definitely a big part of the game.
So it's the main mechanic. No, maybe it's not the main mechanic, but
It's
so
important. It's not just a cosmetic thing. Like taking care of others, both players and NPCs, is definitely important part of the game. Yeah.
nice. So while you're talking, we're watching now some clips from the game. And do you want to talk a bit about what the game is about and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So the Wagadu Chronicles is an online game where you meet other people, right? Like an MMORPG. I think the biggest difference to many other games in the same genre is that it's not about fighting, grinding, and making lots of XPs, and then moving on to the next level. But it's a more of a sandbox type of game. So where you decide what you want to do. So every day when you go in, you get a number of free XP. So we just give you XP. You don't have to grind to get more experience points. You put them into whichever skills you want to grow. And then you spend the day doing whatever you want. So it could be maybe you're really into pottery and you can spend the day making pots and so on. And role playing too is a crucial element of the game. So there are like communities on servers or, like some kind of on the fringes of the MMO community, people who role play in games. But what we're doing is making this a 100% role playing environment, which means that when you go into the game, you act out your character. And so it's like a Dungeons and Dragons table. If you're familiar with the game, you sit around the table, you talk like, I'm a wizard and I'm going to cast this spell. You literally do this 24 hours with everyone else in the game. And as a last thing, of course, which you will have noticed by now, is now based on the typical Euro fantasy, so kind of Tolkien-derived fantasy, but it's based on an African fantasy, Afrofantasy, so derived on the cultures of Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, and of the diaspora as well.
So something interesting is that you mentioned the cultures of Africa. And I remember that maybe 1/2 years ago, you gave a talk at the Game Cyber Unite, which is an event that Federico Fasci and I were running at the Goldsmith, University of London. And your talk was called Make Pre-Colonial Africa Great Again. And I think what was really interesting is that in that talk, basically, you showed how many different cultures and languages and architecture type and alphabets and languages and stuff that were in pre-colonial Africa. Most of which, I know some of which are actually lost or sort of in danger of being forgotten. And it's kind of interesting that there is so much variety, while in the Western countries, in the Western image, the idea of we have a very sort of small and narrow idea of what pre-colonial Africa looks like. It's it's one, usually it's one style, while instead there are so many different. And I think it's a shame that so much is sort of not well known by people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just call it for what it is. It's a form of racism to consider like most African cultures as one. Or like I think one thing I remember experiencing often, like it's getting better now, but I remember like a couple of decades ago, people just like lumping together Chinese and Japanese cultures, and it's like it's just like age, or they'll say like there was even I don't remember which word they'd use, but like just one word to call like East Asian cultures, like Japanese, and I guess Korean, Chinese, whereas of course they're very different cultures that actually within themselves have like very, very, especially China is such a big country, so many different cultures and people. And of course, Africa is like a whole continent, is one of the biggest continents on the planet. It has 2,000 languages and so on.
Interesting. It doesn't look that big on most maps, which is interesting how, which type of map you choose, but it's where you put a focus on what you want to highlight, which I think it's kind of interesting as well.
Yes. I mean, maps are colonial as well. So we're starting with light topics, I can see. But the choice of this type of projection, the Mercatori projection, is very much a political choice as well, because it extends, it warps and extends the very north of the planet. So Europe and the US and Canada and so on. And then it shrinks the hot developing countries, someone would say. But actually, you're totally right. Like Africa could contain Europe, China, India, US. I think they would all fit within the continent. So definitely not one people, not one culture.
So in terms of the world of the game, how big is the world?
So by the way, I promise it's not vodka. It's just it's just tea. That's for the viewers. Although maybe I should get vodka. No, the world, so there's kind of two answers I could give to this, because the Wagadu Chronicles is not just an MMORPG, but it's Dungeons and Dragons setting as well, 5th edition setting. And we have already released a free module with more than 300 pages, so you can go and download it on our Kickstarter page or on the website. And the idea is there is a setting that has several worlds, like Wagadu kind of refreshes itself. So it's constantly changing magically. And there's hundreds of versions of Wagadu, so there isn't one. And for example, alpha and beta of the game are going to be set in different, they're called cycles, in different cycles. And then the final release of the game will be in a specific cycle, which is then going to kind of settle down. Although in the pen and paper version, you can still play other cycles in the past or the future of the MMO. That wasn't a straightforward answer, but I hope it was clear.
Yeah, I think it clarifies a bit, yeah. We actually have a few comments. One from Silverblade. Hi, thank you so much for joining. Saying, I love the art style. Yes. My answer is yes.
Yeah, our art director, Iga, is awesome. She's just great.
And one from Salman saying, always excited to see anything that's Afrofuturistic or Afro anything, honestly. Yeah, I think it's also exciting because we don't get much of that. So, it feels fresh. It feels quite fresh in that regards. And yeah, we have a few comments. Anissa says, yes, I back it too. All the best, Allan.
Thank you, Anissa.
Nice. And of course, if you want to contribute, you have all the links down below. So feel free to have a look, both to reach Allan, both Allans, and also to get the to get the Kickstarter page. Now, one thing that it's interesting is that on this channel we often talk about game development, right? And developing games is hard. Developing online games is hard. Developing online MMO games is even harder. So, how did you start approaching that? What were the challenges of making an online MMO game?
So, confession I'm making on screen, I'm not sure I've mentioned this before. So, for the first time, I think my first thought I might one day work on an online game, like multiplayer game, was like a decade ago, I think. And because I thought like I had this experience in an Ultima Online server. It was already an old game by the time, kind of the grandfather of World of Warcraft. But some friends invited me to this Ultima Online server. It was really cool experience. It was actually a role-playing focused server, so I kind of learned a lot about this part of this group of players who like don't just love D&D as I have done for many years, but managed to create spaces online to play. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know about this. And I became part of the staff of that Ultima Online server. It was an official server. And then I started helping with game design and community management and so on. And that was actually my first game development experience. I didn't know it at the time. I just thought that was like a hobby I was doing on the side, like a very time-consuming hobby, but it was a hobby. And then I realized later on, oh, that was really cool. I'd love one day to work on something like this. And then the idea lay dormant for a while. And I think we've gotten to a point where, first of all, technology has made things much easier. So 10 years ago, working on an MMO was very different from doing it today. We have, it's exceptional. We have some one person developed. I mean, you look at 1 Hour, One Life, that's one person that, built the whole MMO. It's a very specific type of MMO, but it happened, right? And the tools that we have today enable us to do this. Additionally, I think I built more experience. In these 10 years, I've worked in different companies, different stages of development, from prototyping to live games. And I worked in mobile games a lot, which I think was really useful because I'm bringing a lot of this mobile gaming mindset to PC development of like iterations, like playables and so on, tight features. Because you have constraints in mobile that you're used to. When you go to PC, you have like this blue ocean that opens, but still it's good to keep some of this mobile kind of scrappiness. Like, let's get this thing done easy. Let's do this UI in this easy way. And so I think these factors combined, and I think it was just, sometimes you just feel it's the time. So there was kind of a ray of light. Okay, I don't believe in these things, but let's say a ray of light that, let's say my ancestors spoke to me in some way. And then, I felt it was the time. And apparently, people on Kickstarter seem to agree, and that's awesome.
It's kind of interesting. I'm quite curious now to have a go at the game. So Silverblade is asking, so is it a sandbox game? Like, or yes. Can you describe it like that?
Yeah, definitely. That's a very great guess. It's a sandbox game. We use the term as well, both internally, sometimes externally. And the reason is that, yes, at the beginning, there'll be a few like tutorial tips and quests to help you a bit understand the game. But very quickly, you'll be allowed to create your own experience. So you can go anywhere. There isn't like a specific kind of theme park experience you have to follow. You pick which skills you want to grow. If you want to become, as I said, like, I don't know, your thing is become a traveling merchant. You want to buy things and sell them somewhere else where they cost more. You can spend the whole time doing this. It's like nothing stops you from this, and build your own boats and sail through the islands. So if you want to be the traditional MMO mercenary or fighter, you can do that, though fighting is actually, it's a bit harder than other games in this game because we wanted to create this sense of now that people just take for granted, first quest, kill 10 rats, the usual thing. Want to make it, much more engaging. Like combat, for instance, will leave scars on the character. So it's going to be, hard to remove them if you want. So we're looking into, role-playing is the focus, right? So we want combat to be a bit scarier, more dangerous, but you can do that as well. So you'll have options. I think Sandbox is a great way to describe the game.
So can you die in the game? How is it permadeath? How does it work? If you're not spoiling too much.
I can, yeah. So yes, you can die. No, it's not permadeath. You will. The thing that there's definitely a cost to dying, which is that your equipment stays where your character died. We're not 100% sure yet if we're going to be using the word die or disembodied. I don't know what maybe you'll find better, but definitely you will die. You will die, and you will lose your equipment, which is like a bit harsher than many other games. Again, because from a role-playing point of view, having like some stronger loops or things that are more meaningful strengthen the whole experience. So I think permadeath was a bit too far as a step, but having and by the way, something that many people assumed based on the Kickstarter is that other players can loot your equipment, but actually it's not other players, it's other things. Other things can loot your equipment. But so it's full loot, but not by players, it's by other things.
But you have to pet a cow to get the equipment back, basically.
Maybe. That could help.
In one of the clips, I've seen that you can actually pet an elephant. So I'm like,
And see, you're well informed.
Two of them. All right. There's also a lion, so maybe you can pet that as well.
We do have a clip somewhere of like a lion, a GIF, I think, a lion sneaking behind the character.
There's a lion. There's a lion sneaking.
So no petting for lions, but maybe eventually. I mean, there's the lion blood people, which is like one of the 7 lineages, and they are friends of lions. So we can pet maybe with the lion blood.
You have the ability. You can pet a lion. Achievement
unlocked. Yeah, like a skill. We'll make it a skill. Like and the more points you have, the harder you can pet the lion.
You can rub the belly when the experience is like super.
Yeah, when it's like maximum level.
Oh god. So I see that in the game there's a lot of structures and buildings and places. Are those existing villages that you join, or you can actually create them and live in there? How is that working?
That's a great question. And what you currently see in the kind of very early pre-alpha version of the game, handcrafted by the developer. The developer is me in this case. Like I actually built most of the because I have a passion for architecture on the side as well. Something I really like. So level design always is fun. But for the final version of the game, that's not going to be happening much. We're not going to be. There'll be a couple of centers, like kind of like with ancestors, NPCs that you can where you spawn, and there's some things you don't spawn in the complete wilderness surrounded by monsters or animals. But what would happen is that most villages you will meet in the game are created by players. So we have a system. There's some online games that did this. One famous game is Star Wars Galaxies. I think their town system is a great reference, something we looked at for the Wagadu Chronicles. So definitely at the end, most of the villages are going to be created by players. And we're looking into how customizable they will be. We're a small team, so it's still, would love to have you do everything. So there might be maybe some limitations based on the workload, but definitely it's going to be players who can set and start villages.
So the idea is make the players work, so they create the content, not you.
That's one way of looking at it. Yes, of course, because for us as an indie team, we cannot produce the content of a Blizzard, right? So we cannot create like thousands of quests and thousands of cities or hundreds of cities of that. But what we can do is more sustainably create the tools to allow players to build their own things. But this side, I think there's an intrinsic advantage for players in being able to build. I think it's a cool thing as well. So I think there's a confluence between kind of efficiency for us and cool experience for players. So I think it goes both ways. I think it's a cool thing to see players create their own content, and for us as a small team, it makes it easier to actually release the game.
Nice, yeah. I think it's also what drives a lot of players to the ability to I want to create something within the game that stays there. I think it's quite a good way of doing it. If you get
to have an impact, right?
Yeah, exactly. So one interesting thing that I still don't know is where Wagadu comes from. What does the name represent?
So Wagadu is or maybe Francophones would say Wagadu, is the name of an ancient kingdom. I think it's the ancient name of the kingdom of Ghana. Ancient Ghana was not where modern Ghana is. It's more around where Mali is currently. So more the Sahel region of Africa, of West Africa. And basically, if you read a bit of the mythology, the Wagadu or ancient Ghana are similar to Albion a bit. Like you have ancient spirits and kings and queens. And so it's like, Albion features a lot in Western fantasy, or at least many themes that are around kind of King Arthur, Albion, and so on. And so I thought, like, let me look at Africa's Albion kind of and look for inspiration. So that's where the name comes from. And I think there's still currently a region called Wagadu, and I'm really sorry for them because now we're swamping the Google search with the video game. So I can imagine people from Wagadu trying to check, I don't know, like there's bus schedule or something, and like MMO, like that, yeah, invaded by this MMO stuff. But maybe they'll become more famous.
So maybe you need to get buses in the game, maybe to start.
Yes. Maybe to support a bit the community of Wagadu.
So we have a message. We have a question from No Tanks saying it's the actual name of the user, saying, "Been following for a while, looking forward to such a fresh take on a D&D settings. How did building the lore work internally, and how many people are working on the stories?"
Great question. Relatively simple answer. So, like, most of the lore you see currently out was created by me, by myself. So I've been working on this for a while. It was a side project. I started with the lore. I knew I wanted to make a video game as well and a D&D setting, but I started purely with the lore. I had some old ideas kind of floating around, some new ones, brainstorm. I did a lot of research. So there's some of the books behind me, I think, are like, actually most of them are like books about like Africa, pre-colonial African cities and mythologies and masks and everything. So I did a lot of research, and then I used this, I kind of digested this info and started like blending it into the whole fantasy blender and creating a world. And then what at this stage, though, the team is growing. So there's another writer, Kika, and she's like the awesome person behind The Child and the Oath, which is the first adventure, like official D&D 5th edition adventure that we've released. So if you look at the module that we currently have out, like all of the lore of the setting is me, all of the adventure is Kika, and of course she contributed to the lore with some additions on her end. And then there's another third contributor, Stefano, who helped with the creatures, kind of the monsters. But even that, for the monsters, all of the lore was me, and then our collaborator Stefano helped more with the stats and the technical side, kind of.
So we have a question from Silverblade asking, is the word random every time, or is it preset word generation? And I think you maybe briefly said something about the word changing, so...
Yes, I think that's a great question too. I can totally see another video game. So I think it's a great idea, great question, and great idea for another game, like a future Wagadu Chronicles game where like each time you go, you do the city builder, like the cycle is randomly generated and you have this procedurally generated. So cool idea for the future. But actually for the MMO, that's not going to be the case. So the alpha beta will have some different cycles. So there'll be some changes in the map and NPCs and so on. But then when the game is actually released, it's going to stick with that cycle. So the cycle of the release, which is probably, for those who know a bit of the setting, going to be around late 400 or 500 cycle. It's going to be, that's it. Once we release the MMO in that cycle, that's when, so for the next 10 years of the game, 20, of course, who knows, maybe at some point we might think about, but that would basically be a new game probably. That would be like the Wagadu Chronicles 2, and then we go to a new cycle. So that's very, very much down the line, who knows.
So No Thanks is also asking, also wondering if there's any dates floating around for the video game version. So do you have anything? Do you have a timeline?
Yeah, so they're more than floating because they've been announced on Kickstarter. So now, like, this is my risk in case we don't reach the the deadlines. So we have end of next year for the alpha. If you look, there's on the rewards of the Kickstarter, there's a timeline, and then we have end of 2022 for the release of the game. I'm very confident about these numbers, because other game devs often are like, but how can it's 2 years time? And first of all, project management is a thing. Like we're already thinking hard about how not to crunch, we're even growing as a team because of this, because we want to hit our deadlines. But another thing is we are an online game, an MMO. And that means that if something is not yet in the game that we wanted to have, we can still release and keep on adding features, because we are going to keep on growing the game for years after release. So I'm very confident about these dates. And yes, end of 2022, that's so winter 2022, that's the release of the Wagadu Chronicles.
Well, the thing I'm not confident if that I will be still alive by end of 2022, but hopefully.
I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist.
Oh
So
God, no! I'm sort of yin and yang. Then I'm sort of very
compensate.
negative, especially in these periods. So you've been we've been mentioning a bit about Kickstarter, and I think that many people I know are really dying to make a good Kickstarter that is as successful as yours. So do you want to tell us a bit about how did you prepare for this Kickstarter? How is it going? How is it working? And maybe some advices for people that might want to do a Kickstarter for their own games.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. And yeah, there's a lot of things I could say. I feel like do your homework is a big thing. I think in general, like I've spent a lot of time doing research for the video game itself, like every feature, everything in the game. I've looked into like every other, and maybe not every single game that had it, but like every other major game that had that specific feature, and either played it or watch videos and read about the developers. And I did the same for the Kickstarter. So I looked into talks of people who have done Kickstarters, successful Kickstarters, or failed Kickstarters, which is super interesting as well. Right, a lot of blog posts. Asked people who did Kickstarters, gotten feedback. So it was a lot of homework, just a lot of research, and that's. Some people would say, "Oh, just try, go for something." I don't agree. Okay, I think that's bad advice, especially for Kickstarter. Do your homework, research a lot. I started thinking about the Kickstarter already maybe 1.5 years ago. I started actually planning like tasks and doing things a little bit less than a year ago. And so definitely by some of the tweets that were in January and February on the Wagadu Chronicles account were already thinking about a Kickstarter, which ended up happening a bit earlier. So so actually I was thinking to have it. I was even planning for like 12 months ahead. For instance, I had the chance to speak with an incredibly helpful Kickstarter employee, Michael, who manages games for Europe. I actually pitched to him the idea of the game, I think 2 years ago, 2 years before going to Kickstarter. I told him, I think, I had nothing, just a pitch deck. Is like, I think in a while, I'm pretty sure I'm going to go to Kickstarter with this. And I showed it to him, he was super cool, but let me know when you have something. And then I followed up and he remembered. He's like, oh, you're still around, So I think it's never too early for Kickstarter. But I think if you follow the rules, like I call them rules, but maybe it's like all the tips, all the advice that's out there, then the chances are so much higher. So really about how to make a good video, think about a stretch goal, think about the goals themselves. But then of course, the project needs to be interesting. But I think that if you see some really good projects out there, I see them very often because I spent a lot of time researching Kickstarter, and I've seen good projects that had bad videos, didn't build a community before. That's one thing, you have to build a community before. You cannot go to Kickstarter hoping to build a community on day one of Kickstarter. That used to happen in the past. Now it's like very unlikely. So if you're really into gambling and you don't mind like gambling your Kickstarter, then maybe yes. But if you're like me and you have like your stakes are too high, then you should build a community before. Maybe that would be my biggest tip, probably build a community in advance.
Also, I think it depends on how much money you're asking for. If you're asking for like 2K, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But
those fail as well. I've seen those failing as well. And so even that, you still probably want to, but even if it's just your friends and family, you still want to nourish that community in advance. That would be my tip.
Yeah, I think that's a very good advice. But I can see, the Kickstarter has been doing really well, and the idea that in 3 days it was already funded. I don't know. I'm thinking what I would do if that happened to me. I've never done a Kickstarter, thank God. The stress will kill me. But is it? I'm thinking one side of me would be I'm very happy that he's doing well. Another side is, oh my God, there is so much pressure on me because now many more people than I expected are wanting the things that I'm trying to make. So where are you on this spectrum?
Definitely, Is it both, I guess? So it's like I'm both like super excited and happy. It's like this is happening. People care. This is awesome. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, now it's, the cat is out of the bag. Like we have to make it. Like we have deadlines. But I think the positive feelings trump any stress or concerns, because after working so many months without any validation, just like hoping that someone will care about this, it was such a big, I don't know, positive energy. It was like a flow of positive energy. So it was mostly really great. Of course, the stress, you sleep less, you're very busy. Your friends upset because you never you never show up. I mean, now coronavirus is a bit of an excuse. Oh, it's coronavirus. Work, 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 work. But I think if even you, Alan, were to run a Kickstarter, I'm sure you would end up enjoying that feeling of validation and people loving what you're doing. So
Well, if they do.
I'm sure they would. Come on.
So do you end up refreshing every 5 minutes or before going to bed, the first things in the morning to check how it's doing?
That was for a few days, yes. And after a while, my finger started hurting. No, it's not hurting, but yeah,
Bleeding.
yeah, bleeding. That was at the beginning. Then you sort of get into a rhythm where like and this is a relatively long campaign, because we did I think 30. I don't even know anymore. 38 days, 37. But it's like not just a bit more than a month, because we kind of planned it, looking at the dates. It worked really well. Yeah, so after a while, like the fatigue sets in. You check, but not as much as the first couple of days.
So we have a question from No Thanks saying, do you intend the MMO to be web browser based or released on a game client or mobile?
Definitely a client.
Okay,
I mean, who knows in the long term, but we're looking at
is
clients.
it made in Unity, right? Or okay,
Yes,
yeah.
we're making it.
Yeah, the Kickstarter is doing really well. So honestly, I think it's good because I think there aren't as many games that want to do what you and your teams want to do. So I think it would have been a shame not seeing this game, happening for real.
Thank
So I
you.
think it's really good that it is happening. Now, something that I find it quite fascinating is that looking at a video of the Kickstarter that is on screen now, and in the chat I say we have 3 Allans on screen right now, so it's a bit
Lots of others.
it's a bit daunting. I can. It's clear. You can clearly see how much research has been done to make this game. How much research in pre-colonial Africa and in the culture, in the architecture, all those kind of things. I think that this really sets apart from many other games. So one tricky question that I sort of want to ask you is, where do you draw the line between pay homage to a culture and cultural appropriation? Where do you think the line is, and what do you think your team has done to be on one side or the other of the line?
Yeah, this is so it's a great question, and an interesting one, because I've realized that there's a lot of points of view, and I think very often, unfortunately, because of the dominance of the US in media, often we get like that point of view, and we think that's what everybody thinks, right? And I think the whole debate around cultural appropriation comes from like a very, very good place. Like, of course, look at me, like I'm very much against racism. But sometimes I question, like, couldn't we just stick with racism? Because racism is quite clear, like I mean, at least if you have, gone through racist experiences or so on, like, you can tell, it's like, oh, that old friend, I know you. Like, even if it's like slight, I can recognize racism. It's like, I can see. But then it's like, oh, long time no see, hello racism. But then instead with cultural appropriation, it has gone so abstract and academic that sometimes someone like me, who has like, I've lived in 5 different countries, 2 continents, straddle, I speak like 6 languages now. I've studied, I have a master degree. And so in theory, you'd expect me to be someone who reads articles and, I shouldn't be scared by that. But sometimes I find myself thinking, I just not sure what's happening, And I would be in favor of paring down things and making them a bit more clear. And for me, so cultural appropriation, where does it come from? People, and it has been mostly Europeans or like European Americans who have enslaved, oppressed, killed people, from different people of color around the world in their own countries, and often strip them of their language, clothing, architecture, religion. Like these things got destroyed, very often physically destroyed. Very often, this is terrible. Then there's been often abuse and mocking of these cultures, and I've even lived that myself. Horrible when people mock, the culture where you come from. In many ways, being like, oh no, your religion is satanic, or your clothing is savage, or anything, right? Yeah, your accent is uncouth. Like it could be anything, and that's terrible. But then I think the answer for me is like, let's fight racism. And if we see cultural appropriation as like, making sure that cultures of people of color thrive and they grow and so on, I'm in favor of that. When it becomes, this unfortunately happens, especially in the US sometimes, like if you're a white person, you should in no way interact with the cultures of people of color. I disagree, because actually that harms us. Because for instance, the Wagadu Chronicles, if someone says, because I'm white and I don't want to culture appropriate, I'm not going to support the project, or maybe maybe going to support it a bit, but I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to have anything to do with it. I think that's kind of shirking, a bit like avoiding the problem. It's like, it's a bit of an excuse as well. It's like, oh, cultural appropriation, I'm not going to have anything to do with this. You do your own thing, I respect it. No, it's not like this. Like, these cultures have been often cancelled. Like, literally, when you speak of cancel culture, colonialism is cancel culture. Like, you go there, you literally destroy, you prohibit languages, you destroy cities and so on. You want to cancel those cultures. And the solution for this is not like for white people, I'm calling you out, sorry, but to avoid it and to be like, oh, now we're not touching this. It's about engaging with it respectfully and constructively. So for me, if we see cultural appropriation as like, let's respect cultures and all of us engage with these cultures, white people, people of color, and help them grow, yes. If it's like white people should nowhere get close to cultures of people of color. And unfortunately, I see there's a bit of confusion on this topic. So I think it's a very difficult topic. I think there's always gray zones, gray areas. But for me, if you come in with a racist intent, then, beep off. Like you're a racist, we don't want you.
Or you can say whatever on the channel. Don't worry, you can say whatever.
Yeah. Oh, but that's me. I don't use profanities. Like my team knows as well. I never do.
So I use them for both. Don't worry.
Yeah, I censor myself, or I just don't say them. It's like it's my way of speaking. I know it's weird. And then on the other hand, if you're like coming, being genuinely curious and you want to embrace like these cultures and you want to know more, I'm super happy. And I think in the end, if you speak with most Africans, you will notice that they're very excited when a white person like comes to the country, tries to speak some African language, to wear some African clothing. They don't think, oh, this is cultural appropriation. They think this is super cool. It's like because what they know is cultural annihilation. They've been trying to be annihilated for centuries, and finally and if you think like proper racism, if you look at Nazis don't go around like wearing Rasta and like having African shirts and trying to speak Swahili. That's what Nazis do. So I think like if you think about it, like it's very important to kind of avoid going to some extremes of like trying to overcompensate what happened in the past by making another mistake. So I wish I had a more simple answer to it, but what I'd say is like really engaging. Even for the Wagadu Chronicles, I've written it in the lore book. You're genuinely curious. You're not of African descent, but you're curious. You want to engage. You love the idea. Please come in. Please don't feel no, this is not for me because it's made by Black people. I think Black creators want people to enjoy as many people who really are curious to enjoy their own output and cultures.
I think you touch a very interesting problem or issue, let's say, that I see so strongly, for example, in academia, or at least, teaching with students. And it's the fact that sometimes people have good intentions, but they're academically unprepared to talk about issues such as, for example, racism or colonization, really, really dense feminism, transsexuality. So issues that are really dense and really well studied. Some people tend to be afraid of saying the wrong thing, even if they have good intention. And often this leads people to disengage and say, oh, I'm so afraid of being called out, maybe to use the wrong term or to, say something that without wanting is inappropriate, that I'd rather not engage with this topic at all to avoid any backlash. And I think it's a big problem, because this means that a lot of people detach themselves from feminism, from not racism, but from talking about colonialism, because it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm equipped to say this or talk about this. And I think, yes, we should expect people to say the right thing in a way, but also because those things tend to be highly technical sometimes. There are entire books written about those topics. I tend to be very forgiving with people if they have reasonably good intention, but they're ignorant about a topic. Because after all, I'm a lecturer, I have to teach, right? So maybe this is what makes me so flexible. And the fact that I'm Italian, so I didn't grow up in the most welcoming environments of diversity. So I think that being flexible with people that just want to understand, and it can be powerful, because it can make a lot of allies in a way that otherwise you wouldn't. And I think that yes, you touch a lot of very very interesting topic, but again, this probably is a discussion that could go on for 6 hours, and still we wouldn't be able.
Probably its own video. Yeah.
Probably 15 videos. I'm sure. But yeah, it is very interesting, and the fact that the game itself is welcoming and wants people to play the game, I think it's quite a powerful statement. I know that there is I've seen on Twitter this discussion can white people use black emojis to refer to themselves? Some people find it racist, some people find it inclusive, and the fact that play the game. The game wants to be played. So don't that this is the message I'm getting from you.
Yeah, I'm saying very clearly, so at least people don't have to worry. I understand these debates can get overwhelming. As I said, even that I see myself as someone who's kind of on top of things or woke, and so sometimes I'm like, okay, I don't know, this is out of control. So I think maybe just saying it out loud and clear, if you're not a racist person, which probably you're not, if you're listening to this, then please engage. You're most welcome to play either the Dungeons and Dragons version or the MMO down the line, or the Wagadu Chronicles. To me, it makes me so happy that even as a white person, you'd say, I have all of those options of white European fantasy settings, yet I want to invest in this one I don't know much about, and I'm curious and I want to be part of this project. I think this is awesome, and we need more of this.
So about this, we have an interesting question from No Thanks saying, do you have hope that Wagadu could help popularize Afrofantasy in a more mainstream manner?
Yes, I think so. And I think it's already happening. Yes, it's already happening. I think the Afrofuturism brand of things Black Panther for films, or some, especially Nigerian American writers, like Tomi Adeyemi, Nnedi Okorafor, they're doing there's been great steps in other branches of media, like movies and books. Games are behind. So now, definitely within our own sphere and industry of games, yes, I really hope that this is happening. And I think we're already having an impact. I'm part of a network of African game developers, for instance, and some of them have privately got in touch with me to tell me oh, we've been sharing these concepts and your work with our team, and we've really got lots of inspiration. This is awesome. And now with the Kickstarter, again, a couple of people came to me who were Africans or African Americans, especially saying, this is such a big validation. I think I should start working on my own idea. I've been having there sitting in the back of my head, but now this is so I think it's happening already, and that means so much. I tell the team sometimes we're not an NGO, but what we're doing is more than just making money. Like we really want to push the conversation, and it's already happening.
So, Paige, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I probably didn't, but if you write the pronunciation, I'll try to do my best. He's saying, I like the way of looking at it. In the end, why people will play the Wagadu Chronicles, and just playing shouldn't count as cultural appropriation as long as they are respectful and open-minded, which I think sort of summarize what
I
you're
agree.
trying to say. And
So I should have just get them to answer for me because it's such a clear answer.
so thank you, Paige, for the question/answer.
Summary.
We also have a discussion going on about the music of the game, and Silverblade is asking who's composing the game music.
Yes. So there's some videos that we shared actually on our YouTube, so you can have a look. Twin Drums is the company. We have a YouTube channel, and Marcus is the composer. He's really great. We actually got to meet through a game developers LGBT network. That's how we got to know each other. He's a really great person. And basically, when I told him the project and everything, he was like, "Yeah, I can help." Then he flew with me on his own expenses because I was broke and I couldn't pay, to Ghana to spend time with my family and with me. And he traveled around the south of Ghana to make recordings of local musicians.
Oh my God.
So yeah, and to interview them, speak with them. Yeah, so there's I think some like bits of that what we did of the recordings are in the Kickstarter video as well. You will see like if you slow down the video, you'll see him and me like with some musicians. I think he did even more than me. At some point, I felt like he was more Ghanaian than I was because he was just speaking with people, having telephone numbers, just disappearing. Like he was totally integrated. And so Marcus is the composer. He's based in Berlin as well, of Austrian origins. But a lot of the sounds, instruments, and music you hear are from traditional Ghanaian musicians, which we hired when we were in Ghana together. And then there's a stretch goal that we hit already, so it's going to be happening. We will be going, hopefully, COVID allowing, to another African country, or at least Marcus for sure, to probably either South Africa or Kenya, to record additional instruments from local artists and to kind of hire them for instruments that are not part of West African ensembles. This is the musical situation. I think it's a very peculiar one because compared to other fantasy games, we're kind of creating a whole music language. Like, for instance, one thing is like when you die, you will hear a flute, which is like the death flute, which is based on the Ghanaian funeral flute, the atemben. And that's something like an association that is new because now you know like the organ. That's what is it the organ? Yeah, like that like
funeral.
Funeral death. So if you're playing like a European fantasy game and you hear like organs and someone died, you know that, or like maybe a choir, like a church choir, you hear, oh, okay, you're dead, your soul flies away, right? And your ray of light. But we're going to be using other associations. So like the funeral flute is going to be one, and there'll be other ones as well, like the bull roarer for summoning spirits, which is this instrument that's kind of like a rope with that you kind of fling, a very strange sound, and that will be based on like, for instance, some Malian uses of the Dogon people will associate it to summoning spirits. So we're creating, that's one thing, even visually as well, like both musically, we're creating lots of new languages that haven't been used before for games.
There's a few comments commenting about that. No, thanks, you saying that's awesome. I'm glad you're supporting native musicians and getting their work out too. And Silverblade like, wow, amazing, can't wait. It's very interesting. And for me, you said something that I was like, wow, that's actually true. The fact that the typical fantasy world, sort of D&D, is, there's a lot of influence with things, for example, such as Tolkien mythology. Like Lord of the Rings has pretty much solidified what we expect from a sort of fantasy Middle Age inspired world. So people have certain expectations. Even just, I'm thinking about what classes of plays you can have. We sort of expect more or less, a certain variety, all the sort of things. It seems refreshing to me, the idea of an entire new branch to that personally, and I'm speaking, from my own ignorance, I know virtually nothing about, if not what you told me. So I'm quite curious to have that feeling of, oh, wow, sort of like not knowing and learning as I go, this entire new, not necessarily the lore, but how does things work, which is something that like, oh, okay, you're a dwarf, Oh, and a dwarf has like a hammer. Okay, you know, it's a sort of the same things that in your head you expect already, the pattern, the stereotypes that you have about those kind of war, and even space ones. You know, they're very abused. So it's kind of interesting to see that. And we you mentioned Black Panther and the Afrofuturism sort of style that they're using for their throughout the movie. And I was wondering if you think that maybe part of the success of the Wagadu Chronicles is due to a Black Panther effect, as I was calling it the other day. So the fact that the vast majority of movies, they, you know, white cast made by white people, maybe with just, you know, a few black folks now and there. Black Panther was probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably the first, you know, super high budget superhero Marvel movie to have basically an almost entirely black cast with, you know, black writers. And I think that these made, it was very empowering for a lot of people. Even, you know, if and I remember when I watched the movie, I was like, it was forgettable. Because, you know, I'm not, it's not my genre, like superhero movies are not my genre. But I can see why for many people it represents so much, because that was a first for so many. So my question is, do you think that maybe this game has somehow something similar? The fact that there is such a diverse, so many diverse people working on the game, which features basically a completely black, all black characters, and so many different cultural aspects. Do you think that maybe that had an impact on the success of the game?
Interesting question. One thing I have to point out straight away is like how fascinating it is. I don't think about people that much usually on a daily basis on their skin color and how that affects experience. But when you say that the Black Panther movie was not like a big deal, then I realized, oh, okay, you're white and I'm black. It's like it makes it clear, because for me, like even I went with a friend to watch the movie, like for the premiere here in Berlin, Germany. Like she's black as well, African American, and she's not into superhero movies. So even for her, the whole plot and everything, like she didn't like the whole idea of the monarchy and like this kind of like dude that's like saving everyone, the whole superhero thing, right? I was a bit more like, just watching the thing, just enjoying whatever was happening on screen. But I must say, like, that was in Berlin, like, was it 2-3 years ago, an event. Like, I think Germany and Berlin are not known for being the blackest city in Europe. Like, if you go to London or Paris, there's way more black people. But that day, like, literally every black person in Berlin was in the cinema. And it was like, and we're from all over. We're from Africans, Caribbeans, North America, like literally South America, like everywhere. And we're like so excited. During the film, people were calling out, when there's this scene where you see masks from different parts of Africa, people from those continents were like yelling and calling out their countries. People were cheering. One of the best movie experiences in my life, because there was some magic happening in that room. Like we all knew this was a game changer for us. And same for a lot of Africans, friends of mine in Ghana or further South Africa or Kenya, the same. Like there's so much that I do think personally that the plot was decent. I enjoyed it. But even if that was not the case for everyone, there was just something so powerful about this. I think definitely it changed the conversation in some way. And you could argue that this was, just part of like a ongoing process. So it's not like, there wasn't anything before and then Black Panther came, but it definitely accelerated a bit things. Just like in a darker way, you could say COVID has accelerated many things in our society nowadays. It's like we did have video chats before, but now things have changed and are probably going to be changed forever. And same for, I don't know how I ended up comparing Black Panther and a pandemic. But anyways, it's just meant to be like about rather not the negative side, but more about how things can change and there's no going back. So I would say, even if, like the setting of Wagadu, so it hasn't got like any direct connections to the inspirations of, and it's not a futuristic, it's like Wagadu looks more at the past. So it's more like Tolkien did. So I think what we took, or when I researched, I took from Tolkien was not the setting itself, Middle Earth, was more the way he researched and looked at folklore to create something. So that's definitely something that happened, and the context of Black Panther, yes, influenced how much would the Wagadu Chronicles have been successful anyways. I like to think yes, but I don't know. And I think it's great that we have all of these different changes, positive changes happening at the same time.
So we have a message from Silverblade say, to be honest, the Black Panther movie was not that good in my opinion. In a comic book nerd way, so don't know.
Fair enough. Like, I did enjoy it.
But like, just I didn't even enjoy like what's the name of the last Avenger movie? Endgame? Is it called like that? I was
to
like,
be honest, yeah, to be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of that either. For me, there were like too many characters, there was too much going on. But I don't want to get in trouble, so please can we change topics? Otherwise, I've spoken about race and everything, that's fine. But I don't want to get in real trouble, which is like criticizing the Avengers. So
I can see the conversation getting heated in the chat.
Exactly. So there's limits of how political I can get. We can talk about racism, cultural appropriation, but not the Avengers. Let's avoid this stuff.
Yeah, that's probably wise. Like I think if Reddit find us out, they're going to kill us all. Exactly. So in the chat actually, Giuseppe Moderelli appeared, which actually contributed to the game. Do you want a bit to mention what his role was?
Yes, so let's call him out for being in the chat. So he's still contributing, still part of the team, also a member of the team. Like I'm super happy Giuseppe joined because he does what a magical thing that very few people can do is like this wizardry called technical artist.
I know, right?
Which is basically yes. So like bias, right? And basically is like somewhere like some sort of amphibious creature that can breathe the world of technology and programming and art as well. And like, for instance, the looks of the game, like the cel-shaded aspect, the big cartoony kind of Zelda Breath of the Wild aspect of the game is not something that we went to buy on some asset store, but it's something that was handcrafted and it's still being worked on by Giuseppe. And a lot of the shiny, glowy, beautiful things and processes behind that the Wagadu Chronicles are thanks to Giuseppe. So hi and thanks.
So if people have questions about the graphics, hopefully
yes,
Giuseppe can answer it.
Especially because I would struggle, because I would just say, yeah, it looks pretty. So
have you done that with shaders?
Yes, with shaders, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can feel the way I often present shaders to my students is that like not using shaders is like painting everything with crayons, you know, like shaders are what really
That's me.
are what really allows you to decide which tool you want to use, which paintbrush you want to use to paint a painting. So they can really give a unique feeling to your game. So it's the quickest way to make your game looks unique, right? So don't even get like an existing shader from the asset store, because probably if you find it on the asset store, 50 other games have it. Make your own. Even if it looks crap, it looks uniquely crap. That's the advice I always give to the
I'm so glad I'm not making it myself. So thank you, Giuseppe. It's like, yeah, I got really lucky with the team. I mean, I tried to find people, so there was an effort behind. But yeah, and you know, to have this, as you're saying, like be able to build our own assets, our own art style, our own music, our own. I agree. Like you know, in the end, it means like players can tell, right? If you like just got stuff from the store, or and especially in our case, to be honest, there's many things we couldn't even get from stores because our genre is kind of new and Afrofantasy. If you look for African-based swords, African-based sounds of the savannah, like you'd be surprised. There's so little. So yeah, you have to create your own. Like some of the sounds of rainforest and the beach and so in the game currently is just me or Marcus standing with a microphone in Ghana just recording things. So at some point I was in the rainforest, there was this guide showing us the stuff. Like I've been before at the time, I was with a friend, and at some point we just left the guide, we snuck behind a tree like a drop, and then we're like, when they left, we started recording sounds around. At some point, the guy was like, "Where were you the last half an hour?" I was like, "No, nothing." But that's like, you have to do these things when you're working on a new genre like Afrofantasy, because, and I hope for future games there's going to be more material. We'll share some stuff as well and so on. But we're at that stage where we have to build things for ourselves.
It's, I don't know, maybe one day you can publish on the asset store your own sort of library of like
Yeah, maybe something. Yeah.
Pre-colonial Africa sounds, and
That'd be awesome. I'd love such a project. I'd love to do that.
also because, like, I mean, imagine that it's a sort of a thing that reinforces itself, right? So if you search for assets and you only find space assets and Middle Ages assets, then you can only make those two games. But if there are more assets,
European Middle Ages. Yeah.
You see, right?
Because you say Middle Ages, but it's actually what you're talking about is Europe.
You
right?
see the problem, right?
Yes. Thanks for providing an example so we can.
Exactly. Someone was actually mentioning the pattern ocean shaded looks awesome. Yes, it does. It's really nice. I was actually looking at that, and Giuseppe said that he's still learning shaders. He said you never finish learning, especially shaders. You never finish learning, especially shaders. See the comments?
He's very humble too, so.
Well, I think that in a way, working on shaders makes you very humble, because the things. No, I mean, I find it true. Like, you spend like 2 months without touching shaders, and when you look back on Twitter, you see people that have done amazing stuff. So the graphics in video games evolve so rapidly, and part of that development comes from shaders, right? So the way in which we write shaders and the technique that we use in shader, they go so rapidly, way more than gameplay, I think. So yeah, it's you have to be humble, because you have to keep learning shader stuff all the time.
For me, definitely it's super humbling just to look at the work. So I feel humbled by just looking. I feel because I'm like, that part of my brain is missing to work on shaders. So yeah, full respect.
But I can't do 3D models, so I guess. So I guess it's all we all have our own sector in a way. So I also know that you for the development of the game, you've been involved with Riot Games. Do you want to talk a bit about how that worked?
Yeah, sure. So it's a interesting story because I was basically this year, at some point I started entering this mental space of this is a big project. It's not something I can do as a side project forever. So that's why I quit last year. I was thinking probably some in Europe there's like some local fundings that indie companies can get. But again, as you said, an MMO is a big project. It's not like a cute tiny maybe platformer game we're working on. So I started looking for potentially other sources of support, and I saw an article a few months ago with when we had like all of the period after the killing of George Floyd and all the lots of course it was a very difficult period, especially for people like me. On the other hand, there were lots of calls for solidarity coming from the business world as well, from game development. Many of them hot air, to be honest. Like I've got in touch with some people that they're like, yeah, we're going to do something. I'm still waiting. But yeah, wow. I got in touch with Riot Games as well. And I'm like, I can see you want to help Black creators. Now, I think this project is good, so you should have a look. And it's funny because they just announced it. They hadn't even decide how to set up the project, the whole kind of support plan and so on. But good thing was like they actually meant what they say. So then we had calls, we spoke. I was really impressed because I know like many other AAA companies, they had gone through some issues, with like diversity and kind of trying to, they were, how old are they? Like 12, 13 years old or something. So the industry was very different when they started. And there's been some growth happening for them. And so I was really curious to see, is this true? Are you really, because that's always the thing, you see the news, like, oh, we're doing diversity now. And actually speaking with them, seeing what they're doing, I was very impressed. And so I thought like, yeah, this is something I can really work. You genuinely care about the topics. And then it turned into a cooperation where they're supporting the Wagadu Chronicles financially. So like actually most of the budget so far for the Wagadu Chronicles is being provided by Riot Games. So it's Riot Games plus the Kickstarter. This is how we're funding the game. And there's some kind of know-how logistics help as well. They're super nice. Like whenever we need something, like even just for the video of the Kickstarter, we did it ourselves with our own kind of hire here in Berlin. But then at some point we wanted some feedback, especially on the game footage that you were showing today in our stream. And that was like, thanks to the tips, we had like improved some things and we got a bit better at it. So that was just an example of one thing they helped us with. So we're not published by Riot Games, we're still independent, but they're like supporting us financially and from a know-how point of view.
So,
and they've been awesome so far.
Something that you've been sort of hinting and mentioning, a few times during these episodes, is that there's also a tabletop version-ish of the game. Do you want to talk about that and how it relates to the MMO, online MMO version?
So we can remove the ish. There is a tabletop version, and it's very important. I'm saying removing the ish because it's very important for me that the quality of the 5th edition book of the Wagadu Chronicles is as high as if we're done just this. So if I had decided I'm going to become 100% a tabletop role-playing game designer and I'm going to release a book, I would have, that's the quality I'm going for. So I don't want it to be like, oh, just an appendix for the MMO. So yes, if you ask me time-wise, I am spending more time on the video game than on the book. But I've planned, if you notice the timeline for the Kickstarter, for instance, is quite late for the book. Usually it's like a few months. In our case, it's going to be 12 months, no more, end of next year for the release of the book, because I want it to be good. And that's one of the reasons to why we released this free material in advance, is to test the waters, get feedback already, see. And I know people told me, like, one person told me, like, when you said, like, we're going to release a free module, they expected like a 10-pager with a bit of like, oh, this is like a bit of flavor of the book, not a 300-page thing with original art and everything. So the goal is to keep quality high. This is going to be paid, so even better next year. And I have some weekly time I'm going to be spending on the book. Kike, who wrote the Child and the Oath, is a full-time employee. She's joining as she was part-time and full-time to be able to write a lot. There is a chance, it's not set in stone, but I think very likely we'll get a couple of consultants as well for this, especially for the mechanics, to kind of double check for people who have done that even more frequently to make sure everything is well balanced. So yes, it's going to be, if you want to go leave only the tabletop version of the Wagadu Chronicles and not play the video game, I think you're getting the full experience. I still think you should consider the MMO because you get to roleplay there. But I think kind of probably the most full way to experience Wagadu is to play both, like every 2 weeks with your friends, the 5th edition game, have a campaign, and then you get to play, maybe try different cycles and different things. So, and then you have like 1 or 2 characters in the MMO, and those are running every day. You can play them every day, right? And so it's both, and none of the tabletop game is not like a marketing gimmick. And I think we released a free book to prove this as well.
Nice. So we have an interesting question from Otang saying, will you guys eventually maybe release miniatures?
Great question. So short term, the answer is no, because we are a small team working on already an MMO and a 5th edition books, actually, because there's a bit of some expansions around it. And that's a lot of work already. So I think focus is, I always say knowing when to say no is such an important skill for game development that we underestimate often as an industry. But down the line could be. Merchandise is something that we all love. Maybe one day, who knows, there might be a Kickstarter only around like miniatures and everything but just focused on the Wagadu Chronicles tabletop, for instance. So everything is open, but it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be in a few weeks, maybe possibly long term.
Good things take time. So, so we have a question from Marilyn. Hi, Marilyn, saying, would it still be possible to back the game on Kickstarter after the campaign has ended? Which sounds really, really important question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if you so many of for instance, all of the in-game objects that you see in the Kickstarter are Kickstarter exclusives, and I think we wrote it explicitly there as well. So the spear, the pets, like the access to Adobe Island, which is like this magic island that you can sometimes stumble in it in the game, rarely, but with the key that you get as a reward, you can go there anytime and take friends. So like these are things you're not going to be able to find anymore beginning from next month. But accesses to alpha and beta, yes, we'll be providing them down the line as well. So there will be, at least to some alphas and some betas, we'll provide some access. But the full and convenient kind of offer that you see now with all of the special items and everything is not going to be happening afterwards.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, seems reasonable given the how the thing works. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people are kind of giving us trust and putting investing in something in advance, paying something in advance, and so we want to give back to our backers trust by making these rewards exclusive for them. But at the same time, we understand that other people are not able to pay now, join now, and maybe want to join later down the line. So I think we will still make the alpha and beta accessible in some way, but there's going to be still a special place in our heart for all the backers. So thank you, Kickstarter backers. It does mean a lot more, both financially because we can do more things now, and even just from like a momentum point of view, because now we can say, oh, there's people, we have an audience. This game is not just an idea, right?
So no thanks is saying, I hope you will become successful enough to eventually sell miniatures, which is a good thing.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
To hope, I guess. So we also have a question we also have a conversation going on about shader stuff in the chat.
Okay.
So let me see if I can summarize something. So one of the questions from No Thanks is, what was the hardest part to work on from a tech art perspective? And Giuseppe is replying that the hardest part is finding a good solution for the foliage. Grass especially, we want to have lush vegetation but still good FPS. And they're discussing on how how they've been doing it and how the fact they're using simple vertex shaders to make the grass sway with the wind. So for the people that are not familiar, the vertex shaders allow you to change the geometry of an object, so the shape, and it's often used to sort of make things like sway in a wind. So most of the time when you see stuff, grass moving in the wind, it's a shader. It's a simple shader moving the geometry. It's not a real animation in Unity. It usually is a typical way in which it is done. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe Giuseppe, maybe you should come one day just to answer shader questions. I think that could be fun.
Invite him.
That could be fun.
Totally invite him.
Yeah.
To answer all the questions I could never answer today for shaders. So I think I should.
Yeah, and I'm always like happy to talk about shaders, just because there is so much you can show as well on the background, right?
That's true, yeah.
So it's always quite interesting. Let's see. So in the meantime, if you have any other question, feel free to write it, and hopefully we can answer it. I see also they're talking about Minions Art Shaded Grass tutorial. Yes, Joyce has all the best shaders on Twitter. So yeah, that's definitely a good point to get that working. So there's a question about, can you speak on the dialogue system?
Excuse me, which system?
The dialogue system.
Dialogue system, yeah. Great question, because it's like one of the core systems of the game. So role-playing, as I've mentioned previously, is like one of the pillars of the Wagadu Chronicles. So when you are in the world, like in the kind of isometric world of the game, because isometric is the view we're using by default, everybody role-plays. That's something that we enforce. So we're not going to be kind of mean. If you don't know what role-playing is, there's going to be some lobbies where you can get some feedback if you have technical issues, if you don't know what's going on, like what's this role-playing thing. You get support, even like we're making it so the community can help as well. But once you actually land in the map of the game and you're role-playing. So every other person you see out there is actually acting out the character. And there's two ways you can communicate with others. One, there's not going to be any box chat. That's not going to exist. So most MMOs, all MMOs that there say have like this box chat. You can see like region, like room chat, server chat, whatever. None of that. You have to walk around and actually talk to people and meet them. And you have like speech bubbles, like in some games you have that in the isometric space. And you go like, greetings, how are you doing today? Oh, like I just met one of my ancestors, and so on. So, you can role play like this. But what you can do as well is like click on the other character and engage into dialogue mode. Dialogue mode actually, whereas in the normal speech bubbles, you're just these tiny things on the isometric screen speaking. Dialogue mode, you switch into some sort of like cinematographic view where you have like, now the camera is moving around the two characters, they're the close-ups, and it's a bit like a TV show. And you're speaking, doing emotes, smiling, and then there's still the speech bubbles, but they're like, the faces are there, and then you can able to do emotes. So all of the emotes you can do, you'll see them mostly in dialogue mode, because if you go like or something, you wouldn't. Isometric is so small you wouldn't see it. But when you're in dialogue mode, you can go there, and that's one thing that we're building now, like all of the range of emotes that you can use, so dialogue mode is basically like you create your own TV show if you want. And I'm super excited about seeing people streaming their own stories and their own drama and gossip and everything, because it's going to be very easy to follow. So if someone else can come there and just look at the interaction and kind of listen. It's not set in stone how many people maximum will be able to interact, because it depends on how good it feels on the camera, but definitely at least 2 people. And we're looking to do a bit more as well, to have a bit bigger conversation, but probably hardly more than 4, because then it gets a bit messy if like there's cameras running around all the time, and
So one question that I think it's really tricky is, what about moderation in the game? Because MMOs tend to have this big problem, which is the people that are playing MMOs and how to control them. And I know that some of them are absolute trash in terms of what people are making with those games. So what's going to happen? Is the fact that you can't write text enough for you, or do you have any kind of supervision or moderation? How do you report behaviors and stuff like that? Because it seems that in any MMO needs to have at some level some kind of system like that.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'd say every MMO needs moderation, of course. I think I would definitely accept the fact that in our case, we need even more. It's even more of a topic. One thing I would say is it's more, but I'm confident that with the tools that we're building, so yes, there will be reporting. As I've even mentioned it fleetingly before, there will be like some separate lobby for people like to kind of discuss what's going on, what does roleplay mean, for those who never experienced roleplay in any other place, never played D&D, never don't know what roleplaying means. I do say there's some filters that are definitely going to help. The fact that it's a premium game, so you're not going to have these randos showing up. It's a premium game that you buy knowing what you're buying. So most people will have a vague idea. The tutorial too, we're going to explain role-playing. So, and then we're providing resources, community-based, so people can actually help you kind of like, you can be set a bit aside and it's like, hey, you cannot talk about your, I don't know, your football team during it's like, yeah, this is not role-playing. So I think, and from my experience, for instance, moderating role-playing communities, like in Ultima Online and so on, you'll be surprised by how little disruption there can be, like when the community grows. I think it depends a lot on the community self-sustaining. And so that's one of the reasons why we did the Kickstarter. We have a running Discord. We're being so active in the community because the Wagadu Chronicles MMO is happening now already. Like if you go into Kickstarter, these people are on the Discord, many of these people are future MMO players. They understand role-playing. They're teaching some other people who just come in about role-playing, and they're going to have the community grow. So I must say it's going to be a mix of tools, some of them very traditional that we're building, like traditional moderation tools, and then kind of empowering the community as well to teach role-playing. And I'm very optimistic based on evidence. But I do not underestimate this, and the alpha and beta are going to be places where we're going to a bit calibrate further the tools. So for us, it's not just about building the software. Alpha and beta are going to be a lot about building the community and the role-playing environment. And I'm super excited and looking forward to this.
Interesting. So we have a question from page N saying, did you talk already about character customization? Will there be a character creator?
This is a big why, because yes, very much yes. We're already working on it. It's been it's one of the, I don't know if this is one of the most important features, but it's like crucial because in role playing, you need to identify who you are. We finally get to show all shades of blackness and black hairstyles and many of the pre-colonial patterns and jewelry and clothing that has never been used in a video game before. So we're so excited.
Nice.
The only limitation we have is that we're not a 100-people team, so we cannot have like 10,000 jewelry, which I would probably put into the game. But yeah, we're going to have as much as we can. And we're having conversations now. Giuseppe in chat is part of these conversations to kind of efficiently create as much content as possible. So when you create, let's say you're creating a Swala character, one of the horn people of Wagadu, you'll be able to pick different types of horns, different skin colors, and maybe different tattoos and different clothing. Clothing, most of it you'll have to make it or buy it, so it's not something you just get for free, but there'll be lots of options as well. And even customization is a thing, so you'll be able to change some patterns. But all of this is, again, you have to find the resources, have the skill, or pay someone to do it for you, or buy it in the market. But you'll be able to customize things. So there'll be a lot of variety in how people look in the game. Of course, everybody shades of black, so that's one thing to keep in mind.
I like how you sort of specifying that. Any backlash from this game?
Yeah. I think when you grow up as a black queer person, backlash becomes something you have to deal with whatever you do. It's like there's always going to be. So I'd say like I'm not going to make assumptions of the person. I don't know, what your experience is, but I'd say definitely in my life that's part of my experience. So I was expecting backlash because this game is so me in many ways. So I was expecting backlash. Like we're still in a society, planet Earth is still a place where if you're black creating something black, there will be a backlash, unfortunately. And due to the whole history of what has happened and colonialism and racism and so on. So what I must say is like I was surprised by how little there was. So this is, I would say, like I was bracing for like, especially, when we came out with the whole Riot Games partnership as well, lots of their players saw us like, League of Legends players is like, bye. I'm off the internet for a couple of days. They've been nice, like really nice. Like I was discussing recently with a couple of other black members of the team. We're like, so few racist comments. That's so weird. This is kind of like key conversations. Black developers going like, did you notice? Yeah, very few. So of course, actually, if you want, there's like a Twitter thread I published just I think last week. I stopped literally like just with racist comments, and just for fun, I was replying on the Twitter thread to the comments. And yes, a couple of times it was a bit annoying. I was like, I really like when you're not ready. Sometimes, as someone who's discriminated, you think you're always ready. Sometimes you're not ready. Like sometimes you wake up, you're just not in the mood for being insulted or being told fuck off or like something like I hate you or whatever. And a couple of times I got caught off guard and I was like, oh no, I'm being insulted again, or the game is being insulted. But most of the time that didn't happen. So I'd say like really positive. But yes, even for the team, even for the white members of the team, there's something for them a bit new that they had to. Some people are going to hate the game no matter what because of the topics. Someone would say like this is a racist game because you're excluding white people, or like this is or it's like like the game is shit. You're just getting money and stuff because now everything that's black kind of makes money.
Of
and
course,
like,
I'm sure, right, right. I'm sure that was the reason to make the game.
Yeah, I wish.
That's
a great answer. It's a great question. Definitely, and unfortunately, it's a thing.
But I imagine being on Twitter a lot. Unfortunately, I imagine that the vast majority of bad comments probably tends to be the same comment over and over again. So maybe I don't know. I find sometimes that the worst comments are. If someone say, "Oh, fuck you" or something like that, okay, how do you even reply to that? It's not even an insult anymore. It's pretty much as basic as it can get. But sometimes I've seen, I don't remember who posted it, but I remember I mentioned it to you the other day when we were rehearsing. The fact that someone left a bad Steam review on a game, a bad review on a Steam game. Because there was like, in the game I cannot be white, and I find this very racist towards me. I think it was Falconeer.
Falconeer.
Yeah, which has a
South Asian people.
Yeah, South Asian female character. So the worst, the worst of the world together.
Women of color, people of color.
Yeah. and it was like, oh, the fact that I see our hands with a different skin tone makes me feel very uncomfortable. It's 2020. Why don't you let people choose my own skin color? It's very racist, And I find those kind of comments much more insidious, because it's not just an insult that you can sort of, ban, or it's a genuine well, often it's disingenuous, but it's an honest question that people might have, that they would expect. That sometimes they feel entitled to a reply, and so those I find hard to deal with, I guess. I don't know, what is your feeling?
Yeah, like I see your point, but for that specific type of comments, I already classify them as racist, and I think 99% of the time they're not genuine.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They know that it's just a way to kind of rationalize a bit the racism. I very rarely, I think it's maybe some older folks, but I don't know. It's like super rare to meet someone who's genuinely confused about racism and genuinely thinks that white people are nah. It's like I can't believe it. Like, when that happens, it's just an excuse to kind of flip the table around. It's like weaponizing your own suffering and like your own story against you. It's like, oh, you care about racism? Well, what you are doing is being racist. You're being racist against me. So it's like totally like just a way to. It's a very disingenuous, like very, very dishonest.
Yeah.
So,
and I think this is why the people who posted from Falconier, I think they take that, they take that as a racist comment as well, because usually when you do that, you sort of know what you're doing because you're doing it, right? So it's a very precise attack that is designed not to feel like an attack. And I can see that it can be very intense, especially for people that maybe are not used to that. It can be very intense, and I've noticed that I was a bit more political on Twitter a few years ago, and then I stopped, simply because I'm trying to detach as much as I can from Twitter drama. And it was really interesting to see. I talk about relaxed things, right, on Twitter. I talk about games and art and coding and programming. So I expect my audience to be interested in those kind of topics. And sometimes I forget how that not many people share maybe the same values that I might have, for good or bad. And what happens often is that every time I talk about, for example, feminism, which is a topic that I often used to talk on Twitter, suddenly I could see a drop in my in the followers count, and it was very frustrating in a way, because you're thinking those are people that are following me, and maybe I talked to about shaders and stuff like that, and they felt they didn't want to hear what I was saying because I was talking about those topics that I think are very important. Some people might say, oh, why are you talking about feminism if this is a gaming channel? Spoiler alert, it's not. Or if you're talking about shaders, why are you suddenly talking about racism? And for me, it's the same way why we're talking about Kickstarters, because to make a game, you have many barriers that you have to overcome. One is, of course, the technical. So you have to learn shaders, right? So sometimes I talk about shaders because you have to make stuff look pretty. Sometimes we talk about Kickstarters, like we did today, because, games cost money. So how you get access to money is part of game development in the same way shaders are. And sometimes we talk about racism and feminism because the barriers that people have in terms of employment and, ability to get funding and ability to get recognized is a barrier that people have that they have to overcome. In the same way, getting funding and getting stuff look pretty are things you have to overcome. The problem is that if you don't see those kind of things as part of game development, it's probably because you never have to face them. Like, maybe some of the racism you have, probably all the racism you're facing during the development, I've never had to face it. So it's never something I have to account for when I made my own games, for good or for bad. And I think that it's good if you didn't think they were part of game development, because maybe it means that you never were on the receiving end of those things. But just because you weren't affected, don't think that those are not issues that developers have to overcome. They have to overcome them on a daily basis. And I feel this is why sometimes on this channel and on my not on Twitter anymore. I stopped posting stuff political on Twitter, but on this channel, that's why sometimes we talk about those themes, because they are part of the development. And I think that probably when the game is out and people will be played, maybe we will speak again and you will tell me a lot of horror stories about that. So racism and feminism are part of game development, and I think it's something that I would like more people to realize. I'm happy that not many people realize that, because maybe it means that they didn't have to experience it, but I think we should all realize that they are part of the game development.
Yes, that part. I'm not sure how I feel about I mean, it's good that people don't experience it, but then it means too that maybe a lot of people in our industry are, white, cisgender, straight men who did not experience it. So maybe there's kind of pros and cons to this argument. But on my end, I think a bit of, for you, as you're not a visible minority at least, like a bit of politics can definitely help you filter out people. So go for it. You need to filter them all out. They're like, it's like, just like this. You need to get rid of all the dust, all the dirt. So.
Oh no, I mean, I'm saying something probably controversial, but if racist people want to give me money without expecting me to change my content, by all means give me money. And maybe some of the content I make might help them to change a bit their perspective. I don't know. Maybe I can sneak some good things.
I hope so.
I don't know. I don't know. This is a bit it's a bit cheeky to say, but I think it's interesting, and I understand why a lot of people don't think that racism is something that not just affects them, but it's not something they should learn, because it's like, oh, it's detached from me. Well, spoiler alert, it's really not. But I can see the argument of, oh, it doesn't touch me, so I shouldn't get involved with politics and stuff like that. Well, if you're not getting involved, you're promoting the status quo. So you're getting involved by not getting involved, You're just not aware of that. I feel that being a lecturer puts me in a position where I have to get involved, because some of my students will have those issues, and because my actions will affect students that might have those issues, and my ignorance of certain topic will have an impact on students. And I know that Goldsmith is very active on decolonizing the libraries and similar conversations. So I feel the need to get involved, because I feel it's my job. So maybe this is also why I feel that I, at least maybe not on Twitter as I said, but at least in the academic content, I need to be much more vocal about those issues, even if they don't technically, touch me directly, as many people would say, but they touch my students, and so I feel I need to have at least, a basic understanding of what they're going through. Otherwise, how am I going to support them? So yeah, I think we're going into very dangerous topics, very deep down the rabbit hole.
I have no issues talking about racism, so no worries.
So let me see if we have any more question. Yeah, I see people commenting what we were saying. Paige is saying, I think it's important to remember that many racists are actually from well-off academic families. They are totally capable of construct a bad faith argument that sounds intellectual and smart. Yes, often this is what they do.
I agree. Yeah.
Death to Existential Insecurity, or it's a good name, saying, how do you interact with the argument that those with social issues should let their work speak for them? I personally view that as disingenuous.
Those with social issues should let their work speak for them. So like someone who's like from a disadvantaged background should just work hard, and they'll succeed in life if they work hard. Is this the
Probably,
question?
probably, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely disingenuous because there's one very clear argument that can be made against that. It's kind of like, when you look at two CVs and you go like, oh, but this white cisgender straight programmer has like did this internship, won this prize, and managed to do this company, and then this I don't know disabled black trans woman did not do any internship, they don't have the certificate, they don't this on paper. It's like you can all go, if you're like someone who's racist and doesn't care, you go like, oh, I'm going to hire only the white person because this black person probably didn't work hard enough, right? But actually you look at like the internship was unpaid. So that white person had like rich white parents because the great grandparents of that white person were enslaving the great grandparents of the other black person. So they had, yes, because that's, I mean, like, yes, I mean, I'm not mincing my words because like lots of Western civilization depends, like entire swathes of the economy were based on slavery. So, and colonialism affected like most black people. So you have like this, I know that if Ghana had colonized Italy, like my story would have been a bit different for sure. Then probably I would be, who knows where I would be. But, so there's these factors to keep you, and then the internship is networking. So like if you have part of a privileged majority that has access to network and so on, the other person didn't have access. So if you look at like all the context and all the how the historical socioeconomic context reinforces these differences, is not fair to say like, oh, but then this other person from a minority should have worked. And the truth is that you have to work double as hard. So I know I found myself in situations where I felt I had to work harder to achieve what someone else could have achieved. And I know I couldn't, for instance, afford non-paid internships that were a thing a lot, like throughout Europe, and that made my life harder, for instance. And so it's context is a big factor, and it's very disingenuous to ignore it.
So I find it's really interesting because about last year I was working as a consultant in algorithmic bias for a government-related body, and we had exactly these issues. So the fact that there's a lot of algorithm deciding basically who gets the job or who gets the mortgage, right, based on data. And a lot of the time when you want to hire people, what they do to be they try to be race blind, or gender blind, which means that they only look at qualifications that from the outside, as you said, it sounds okay. It sounds like, okay, because I'm removing pictures and references to gender and religion or race, I can't be racist. But the problem is that a lot of things are proxies for race or gender, and so what end up is that people that have been from disadvantaged backgrounds, or they had a harder time, or they're part of a minority or underrepresented group, they did not have access to the same resources or to the same opportunities or possibilities. So these CVs naturally, I can never fit my hands on the screen. The CV naturally look unbalanced, and by doing that, by being blind, you're actually being blind to the racism. Not because people started off differently. So what I've seen done with success in that regard is actually comparing what you achieve relatively to your possibilities. So, for example, someone that makes 50K in London as a job is not the same as someone making 50K maybe in Yorkshire, because the cost of life and the access to opportunities are different there. So, maybe the 50K job in Yorkshire is actually a better position, because there are fewer positions there that are paid that much. While in London, 50K is like, okay, it's an average good salary, not too much. And looking at how people could achieve with respect to their initial condition, that has helped a lot, from the experience I've seen. Sorry, that's to existential insecurity. Maybe that was too long answers. Yes, they are very disingenuous. They are very disingenuous or very ignorant of how you do data analysis or how you evaluate people. So yeah, I think that's the most simple answer we can give. So I think we've been talking for almost 2 hours. So probably we can start thinking of going to have some food. I haven't had any food, so I'm actually starving. So there's a question that I keep asking to all the guests on the show, and the question is, how many versions of Unity do you have installed on your machine?
Aha. So actually, if you had asked me a few months ago, I think it was maybe four or something like that. But now it's just one. I'm going down to one. So and I'm very proud. It's a bit like Marie Kondo, the joy of I feel like I did my Marie Kondo thing for Unity. I got rid of the other versions because I think a couple of years ago I was trying to relearn because of the project. I was getting back into Unity. I was learning stuff. I even did some classes, and because I hadn't used Unity for years. And then, now I don't need to to have those old versions anymore. So
Yeah, I think I'm not at the point yet in my life. I live with 100 objects in my life, but I have
yes,
more than 100 versions of Unity. No, that's not
you
true.
need you need Marie Kondo to help you with.
Actually, I wanted to write a series of tutorials on how to do digital decluttering, which is
There
something
you
I'm
go.
struggling with. Like my real life, perfectly empty inside but I'm a hoarder inside. I'm a digital hoarder inside my
Yeah.
laptop. So yeah, maybe I need to ask you for advice at some point about that. So Allan, if people want to find you or want to find a game, where they can find you?
Yes. So if you go on Kickstarter, the Wagadu Chronicles, you can find the current Kickstarter, which is running for another 10 days. And then yes, links.
Oh,
And we're very active on Twitter. Oops, I disappeared, right? Yeah. So we're very active on Twitter as well. And we have Instagram, so all the Wagadu Chronicles, and then a bit Facebook, but better Twitter and Instagram. And we have a website as well that usually redirects answer. But I would say Twitter is super active and Instagram. So if you want to find me directly, Twitter is probably the best way. Just ping me or yeah,
perfect. And
that's it.
correct me if I'm wrong,
Well
there's
done.
still 9 days left to back the Kickstarter, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
so you can find all the link down below if you want to back the game. I think it's a good game. He has good shaders, so maybe we did manage to get the weekly dose of shader goodness. So
Yeah,
yeah, even just for that, you should back the game, I guess.
good
But no, I
shaders.
think I think it's a unique game. It does something that not many games want to do before. It's quite an ambitious project, but I think if someone can make it, it's you and your team. So I think it's a game that should be supported.
Thank
Now,
you.
with that being said, thank you so much, Allan, for being here tonight. I think it was nice. I actually wanted to invite you a bit in the future. You were in the future on my list just because we had Anissa just 2 weeks ago, and you both attended the Games Library night. So I wanted to space you out a bit longer, but because of the Kickstarter, I was like, okay, we need to do this now.
That's awesome.
But I'm
Thank you.
glad we had the opportunity. But really, for the people watching, stick around. I'm going to talk a bit longer. But Allan, thank you so much for being here tonight. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Bye. Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. So, for the people that are still around, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm not going to announce who the next guest is going to be. Probably the next one is going to be in a couple of weeks, just because I have so so much to do with the college, so I need to find a good balance without going absolutely on fire. But with that being said, I also want to say a quick shout out to all the people that have joined Patreon this week. If you're not aware, I posting content on Patreon. I post usually a video a week, maybe every 2 weeks right now because of the college, but I post a tutorial or a tutorial series every month. So it's something educational. So if you're interested, go to my Patreon, patreon.com/Allan Zucconi, and hopefully you can find there something you're interested on, or a tutorial about shaders, artificial intelligence, inverse kinematics. There's a lot of stuff, so maybe you find something that you're interested. But so yeah, thank you to the people that have joined. So thank you, Anthony Nguyen, thank you, Robin, thank you, Harm Banzon, thank you, Lenamon, thank you, Miss Lantern. Thank you so much for supporting me. The show wouldn't be possible without your support, and probably a lot of the things I do wouldn't be possible without your support. Also, for the people that are not aware, I recently released a short documentary about Conway's Game of Life, and the reception was really, really nice. And what is even nicer is that he actually went sort of viral on Twitter, with Vsauce actually retweeting it. He has 1.2 million followers, so that was a big boost. and I'm glad that happened. So it took a long time to work on that. So I'm really happy it's getting some of the visibility I think it deserves. I'm working on I started already working on the next video, but because I have so many things going on, probably will take some time before it's out. So I don't know if it can be out before the end of the year, but I'm working on it. And it is likely going to be about Minecraft. But don't be alarmed. It's going to be technical. So it's going to be about the procedural generation aspect of Minecraft. And I am already writing some Java code to generate some really cool sequences, and hopefully I can get some custom versions of the game that shows how the procedural generation is working. So I'm really, really excited, but I need time. Right now I have none of that time, unfortunately. But again, thank you so much for to all the people that are supporting me on Patreon, and also all the people that have been here tonight. I can see the chat was quite active, so thank you, Anissa. Thank you, Christo Manos. Thank you, Silverblade. Thank you, Salman. Thank you, No Thanks. Thank you, Paige Ann. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Thank you, Nikita Elizarov. Thank you, Giuseppe Modorelli, who's actually working on the game. Thank you, Marilyn. Did I miss anyone? Thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Mitch McClellan. So yeah, with that, thank you, Anissa. She's still around. And thank you, Death to Existential Insecurities. First time I made it to a live episodes. Oh, thank you so much. That was really nice to know. Now, with that being said, I'm so hungry. So I want to thank you all for being here today or tonight, and hopefully I see you next week, but most likely in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much.